Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, and welcome to House Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Lauren D. Pitts. Tonight, my guest co-host, Regina Williams, and I are joined by our very special guest, Daka Dan, the medicine man. Dan is a spiritual warrior with ambition to change the world one open heart at a time. With a background in neo-tantric yoga, shamanic energy medicine, and twist inner alchemy Qigong, am I saying that right, Dan? He cultivates a practice, gong. He cultivates a practice in Annapolis, Maryland. At home and around the country, he serves a private clientele and teaches workshops, along with providing transformational coaching services for men who wish to more fully embody their sacred masculine birthright as deeply conscious and sexually empowered community leaders. He also works with women as a catalyst towards sexual wholeness and creative abundance, as well as couples to help, like that, right? As well as couples to help them create the kind of loving and sexual relationship they have always wanted. At only 25 years old, Daka Dan stands as an individual example for a new generation of light workers, grounded, willing, and eager to manifest the unfolding of the Aquarian age. He also is a budding musical artist and writes uplifting and soulful songs with only his voice and a guitar. Welcome to House Talk, Dan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lauren Pitts. I am so excited to be here, and I was sharing with everybody before we went live, but this is actually my first time on the radio, so this is quite special, and I'm delighted to spend it with you guys.
We are certainly glad to have you, and what better place than to get your radio feet wet than on House Talk. It's a safe place, and it's comfortable here, so just welcome, and we're going to have some great conversation tonight.
Absolutely. And thank you, Lauren, for having me back. This is Regina.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Dan. I'm so glad that we're all here, Folks, Dr. Pitt. She's quick to put disclaimers out when the show is not suitable for immature audience. And tonight is that show. This is a no kiddie zone kind of night. And truth be told, if you're that person that winces when your friends tell sex stories, or you're the one whispering behind their back because your sexual appetite and sense of adventure is more open than yours, then this show probably isn't the one for you to listen to. Or maybe you do want to listen and you need to listen and you just don't know it yet. Well, I'm going to say I dare you to stay tuned in, because you never know. You might hear something tonight that can sexually liberate and empower you. Word in the street is that many men are attracted sexually to liberated women. We also know that women may not be as sexually liberated as their men, and that their sexual attitudes or about sexual liberation can cause relationship problems. So we know these types of conversations are hard for some of you, but that's what House Talk is all about. It's about having those hard conversations because it's necessary to educate, empower, and liberate us so that we can be our focused, our best selves, and that we can strengthen our relationships, homes, and communities. House Talk provides solution-focused strategies to help each of you live their best life ever. So guess what? Tonight we're going to shed some light on how to have your best sex life ever as we discuss opening Pandora's Box, BDSM, swinging, and masturbation. So we want to hear from you during the show. So call us live with your comments or questions at 515 515-605-9744. Again, that number is 515-605-9744. Go ahead. I say stay with us. Go ahead and give us a call. Come on. We want to hear from you.
Yes, indeed. So let's go. Here we go. And look, and let me just say, as we were talking before we went on the air, I was telling Regina and Dan, just as I said to you, our listening audience, in the video countdown post, I am going to try my level best to behave tonight. I promise. I'm going to try. Operative word there is try. So I also shared with Regina and Dan that if they triggered me, it's their fault if I act up. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that disclaimer out there too. So on that note,
the gun's in the holster. The gun is in the holster.
Look, right now the gun's in the holster. Right. You know, I have been known to take the holster off, but right now it's strapped on and the guns are in the holster. So that being said, the Urban Dictionary defines sexually liberated as the ideology of one shamelessly and often satisfying their sexual needs and desires without the burden of guilt or the judgment of established, morally correct societal mores. One who, when horny, has no qualms finding someone or someones to break him or her off right and proper, preferably many, many times over. That's not Lauren. That is the Urban Dictionary, I swear. This applies equally to women as it does men, and often the gender of the sexual partner is moot as long as orgasm is achieved. There is usually mutual sexual desire, tension, and neither party has expectations of future encounters. Though should they present themselves, they are rarely declined. So what I've decided that I'm going to do in an attempt to keep the guns in the holster, if y'all just hear me giggle for no apparent reason, that is my attempt to self-regulate and to behave, okay? So,
okay, I'll take it.
Okay, so I'm trying. I'm using my coping skills. Okay, so why is the topic of sexual liberation, especially where BDSM, swinging, and masturbation are concerned, such a societal more? Dan, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'll say, first of all, I definitely will be the first to admit I'm not an expert when it comes to BDSM, but to kind of shine some light on this for those listening in, for me, this really speaks to this theme of sexual liberation, because within, that definition that you read from the internet, it seems that something about sexual liberation that's essential is our ability to express ourselves sexually. So what does that mean? It's like it's answering to a call for what we really desire, like what's true for us. What do we want to feel? Who do we want to feel that with? And so when it comes to BDSM, there's just all of these unique and colorful avenues to scratching that itch, whatever it is, whatever reason that we want to discover, these parts of ourselves or feel things that we've never felt before, we can through these avenues. So BDSM, I understand, is bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, and sadism and masochism. And so within that, there's a whole world. There's restraint and surrendering to a partner who has complete control over you, or vice versa. There's play with pain and toys and restraints, and there's really a whole world. And most people don't really realize that, when we're talking about these sorts of kinky things, that they're probably already doing some of this, if they've ever spanked their partner, for instance, or scratched, their partner. So, yeah, it's more common than people really talk about.
I also think that I think that our society does a lousy job, if you will, of legitimizing what's labeled societal mores. And the reason why I say that is because it's almost like if you do it in the dark and you don't tell anybody, it's okay, right? But, you can be kinky, you can be the freak of the week, you can be all of these things, but don't you dare say it out loud. And in my professional and my personal opinion, I believe that that's where the problem starts to arise. I am of the persuasion that as a grown woman, if I'm big and bad enough to do it, I ought to be big and bad enough to own it. And that doesn't mean shouting from the rooftops, hey, I'm into BDSM and, swinging and masturbation. But what it says is that if we're having a conversation, I ought to be comfortable enough in my own skin to have that transparent dialogue with whomever I'm speaking without the fear of judgment or criticism. And I think that that's why societally we have so many mores, why we have so many secrets, because people are afraid that if they come out, whether it's out because they're a part of the LGBTQ community or out because they're into BDSM swinging and masturbating and talking openly and honestly about that, there's this fear, this stigma, if you will, that they're going to be judged and criticized and somehow looked upon as being a pervert or there's something wrong with you or whatever the case may be. And I love the fact that your bio highlights the importance of having an open heart. That's something that was instilled in me in my master's work, in that particularly when you're dealing with individuals, when you're navigating a diverse world, right? You have to understand, or at least attempt to understand, that everyone has their own stuff. People are different. And who am I to judge you or to criticize you because you choose a different lifestyle than perhaps I do? I don't have that right. And I think that the very foundation of that societal more is one of judgment and one of criticism. And I think that that's why it becomes such a problem, because people become so bound, no pun intended, but people become so bound out of the fear of being judged and criticized that they don't have the courage that it takes to be authentically who they are. And I think that BDSM and swinging and masturbation, goodness gracious, I remember being an undergrad and visiting my son's father where he was educated, and we were all sitting around talking one night, and it was me and my girls had gone down and we were just kicking it. And we got on a conversation about masturbation, and it tickled me because the guys seemed taken aback by the fact that me and my girls talk so freely and talk so openly about masturbation, because they had encountered so many females that were just like embarrassed and, oh my God, I don't do that. It's like, are you kidding me? And maybe you don't. But guess what? I'm more inclined to believe that there are more who do, but they're so ashamed to admit it that, it's like, oh my God, I don't want anybody to think that. Like, stop playing. Stop. Just stop. People are afraid to be authentically who they are because of the judgment and the criticism. And it's sad. I think that you have to be comfortable enough in your own skin to own your stuff, whatever that is. And it's not about whether it's somebody's business or not, but again, it's about the liberation piece and a willingness to just accept people for who they are and where they are, though they may differ from you. Regina, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think also, and this is such a different topic, but I think it's also that, people are on so many different levels of their own personal traumas.
Yeah.
And their own, and their own steps in healing processes, that certain topics just, trigger things for them. Yes. And I think that, and we're saying the topic. We're not saying,
actually
that
engaging.
you are, right, that you're engaging or that you're condoning or that you're in that's what we're saying. Just even the topic does something to some people, and that and we have to understand that people are not in that realm of space where that they can talk liberally about everything. But I will say that and it goes back to what you were saying in the beginning, that communication has to take place. These things have to take place, especially for folks who have experienced some level of trauma in the area of sex, that you need to have those conversations, and that you have to be able to have an open heart, and be able to, because it could also help in the healing process. But I do believe that just the thought of the BDSM and swinging and masturbation triggers a lot of people, and they just can't take it.
You touched on something that provoked another thought in me, and I think I mentioned it in my autobiography, but I don't remember for sure. The irony of the traumatic piece that you talk about, how I became aware that there were certain things about BDSM that appealed to me actually came as a result of a traumatic experience. And I had to process clinically, I had to process through that. And when I was working with my therapist, one of the things that I had to address is, okay, this happened to me and this was my reaction. And I know that, our body reacts a certain way when we're stimulated, but moving beyond that, one of the things that I said to my therapist was, that's not traumatic for me anymore. It's not traumatic for me anymore. I actually kind of like that. Certainly didn't like the manner in which I was introduced to it, but definitely became aware that there are some things that are sexually appealing to me once that door was opened in my life. So now for me, as you mentioned, the importance of the healing process, now as an emotionally whole me, I'm able to, or have been able to, explore those areas in a healthy way, if that makes sense, as opposed to what the initial introduction was. And really be able to not only explore it, but to make sense of it, and to be able to responsibly make that connection between my feelings and my behaviors where sexual desire and stimulation is concerned. So I wanted to add that, because the traumatic piece and the healing piece, it's definitely, and I think that where couples are concerned, that very well, Regina and Dan, it may be a contributing factor to why your mate, listeners, does not want to experience something or try something with you. And again, that's why it's so important to have these conversations before you enter into a sexual relationship with somebody. There are just conversations that need to be had beforehand. You have to be proactive in having these types of conversations and not reactive, because once you get in that place and space of reactivity, guess what? You're behind the 8 ball now, and your relationship is going to have some problems that you're going to have to work through if you want it to last.
Absolutely.
So many argue that 50 Shades of Grey is a bad representation of BDSM, and it makes me wonder why. I actually think that Mr. Grey was way sexy, way sexy. The man is just sexy to me.
You mean the actor?
Yes, and I remember when I saw the movie, like, I wasn't analyzing or processing the movie from the perspective of, is it a good representation of BDSM? I was looking at the movie from the perspective of, darn, they're having fun. It was just, it appealed to me that way. You know, and I remember actually I was living in Barbados at the time, and folk on that island were losing their darn mind about that movie. And some of my girlfriends, you know, they were having the watch party. They wanted to get together. I said, I'm not going to watch that movie with a bunch of females. No, I'm not doing that. I know that's what no, it just didn't add up for me. I wasn't going to watch it with a bunch of females. But I want to know if either of you has an opinion of why so many feel like it was a bad representation of BDSM. But before you answer the why, can you each sort of share with our listeners who, or Dan, I'll present this question to you. You already said it, but if you could repeat it. Before you answer the why, tell our listeners who may not know what the letters mean in the acronym BDSM, and give our listeners an idea of what a good representation of BDSM would look like.
Sure. So there's lots of words in here. So there's bondage and discipline, there's dominance and submission, and there's sadism and masochism. So if you take that first one, bondage and discipline, it's all about restraint and power play. So, you know, for example, you might have someone on a leash, and or you might be tying them up with rope, right? And it's really all about, like, there's the dominance piece in there too, but, you know, for the person who is being restrained or being disciplined, they are in this space of very deep surrender, you know, and the part about this, you know, can seem like, oh, you know, there's abuse or, you know, some kind of situation like that, like you're talking about the judgments that can be passed on it, when in reality, the amount of trust that a person has to have to really be bound and restrained under the loving power, you know, of their partner can be incredibly healing, you know, like we were talking about earlier in the conversation. And then, you know, dominance and submission, you know, it's really just channeling those primal forces, you know, that are deeply encoded in our DNA, our will to dominate or submit to each other, again, in that same surrender. In a way, it's like surrendering to an animal quality, you know, that we have, and it looks a lot of different ways. And you know, I was saying earlier that most people don't even realize when they do, you know, certain things like, you know, spanking, you know, their partner, scratching, you know, their partner, biting their partner, all these little things. And if that's where the sadism and masochism comes in, is when there's actually, paradoxically almost, pleasure found in pain.
I think that the other piece that people miss, and you mentioned it, I just want to expound on it a bit more, is how important that trust factor is. You know, before the show, my sister and I were talking, and we were discussing the whole, you know, this whole realm of BDSM. And one of the things that we agreed upon is for individuals that are considering experimenting with BDSM, or even for those that are perhaps enjoy BDSM, but they've had a bad experience, that trust is paramount. You cannot engage in this type of sexual gratification with just anyone. It absolutely, positively has to be with someone that you trust. I know my sister and I joked right before the show came on, and she was like, you know, there have been individuals that have posed the idea, and it's like, ain't nobody doing that with you so you can just tie me up and leave me? Like, you know, leave me for the ants. No, we're not doing that, right? You know, but I mean, think about it. So there are people that you wouldn't want to engage in these types of practices with because they're not trustworthy, and you wouldn't be safe in that experience with them. And it's not meant to be a traumatic experience. It's not.
Right.
It's meant to be a pleasurable experience, but unfortunately, clearly we do see the presence of BDSM in domestic violence situations, and in those situations, by design, it is meant to belittle, degrade, demean, defile. But BDSM in that arena of two consenting adults is not meant to be a negative experience. It's meant to be a highly pleasurable one and a highly fulfilling one. And that's why it is so very important. We cannot stress this enough, how important it is that the trust factor must be there. If the trust is not there, it is not something that you should be giving serious consideration to. You just should not, because it could turn out quite dangerously for you. And we're talking about two responsible consenting adults where these types of experiences are concerned. So it's so important to highlight the trust factor.
All right. Okay, our discussion is turning to fire, talking about sexual information tonight. And audience, we want to hear from you. So give us a call with your comments or your questions. The number is 515-605-9744. 515-605-9744. So go ahead, give us a call. Call with a question. You might be thinking, you know what, I might be needing to have a conversation. Maybe I need to talk to Dr. Pitts or Daka Dan about how I can go about even introducing the conversation, because I think it's necessary, I've heard for as long as I can remember that men want a lady in the street and a freak in the sheets. So I know I'm not the only one, because I've heard it since I was little, didn't even know what it was meaning at the time. And as I said, when the show first started, many men are extremely attracted to sexually liberated women. In fact, they go as far to say that most men find sexually liberated women irresistible. Probably why I'm single, but whatever. Anyway, sexual... I'm just saying. Listen, everything ain't for everybody, but I'm always open for the discussion, and I think communication is paramount. That's why I am, I'm here for it. I want people out there need to have these conversations, especially, when we're talking about, things that are, trust and trust factors, and just being completely honest with each other, especially if you want a long-term relationship and you want to do everything possible to keep your union together. And if this is something that needs to be discussed, your host tonight can help you with that. So I said all that to say that, we need to, we want to hear from you. You may not realize the power that you have because of your restricted sexual education or inhibitions, like belief systems such as good girls do not initiate or give oral sex, or, sex is the woman's, etc. All of those things. I mean, we're not the only ones that hear this stuff, and so we want to open the dialogue. So women need to take back and own their sexual power. We need to reclaim it, and sometimes need to understand that we should educate and inform each other, and know that we also deserve sexual fulfillment and pleasure. So I'm about to put a question out there to our host. Elk, is that all right? And this is not a trigger for you, Lauren. Okay, I'm just saying. If someone was curious, is that a call? Was that a call?
No, not yet. Go ahead.
Okay, so if someone's curious about trying BDSM, how could they get started, and what kinds of things do they need to practice? And here's another one. Is it expensive? Because I did see a little bit of the movie. I'm not going to say I watched the movie. I saw the previews, and it looked like they had a whole setup going on in the basement and stuff. Is that
the
expensive?
Red Room? Look, the Red Room?
Yeah, the Red Room. Like, I mean, it's this, like, how does someone even, go? Are there stores? Do you order stuff offline? Like, how do you even get into some of this stuff? I'm just asking. So I'm asking for the people out there that are afraid to call, okay?
Mm-hmm. Dan, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Sure. So, unfortunately, a lot of people get their primary sexual education from pornography a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. So, of course, there's a lot of unlearning to do. But what I would say is that the best places to learn, different elements of like BDSM expression are probably in community, to be honest. So, for example, in the Washington, D.C. area, there's a place called the Crucible. And, it's a dungeon, but, they'll have, aside from like parties and things like that, they'll actually have classes where you can go and you can learn shibari or, all of these other different arts. And so, whether it's like finding a group of people from, meetup.com, I'm sure there's like, regional sort of different places where people come together and they, in a sense, skill share and, teach each other. And as far as, expensive goes, you could buy a leash for $12 or $200. It's kind of like anything where
you want a studded leash, or you just want a regular one?
Exactly. Velvet or no velvet, right? You want to be comfortable?
Look, fur or leather? What's your preference?
Oh, wow. Okay, but I did it.
The other thing too that people might want to consider. So you said it. You alluded to it, Regina, when you were presenting the question. So yes, there are online stores. I'm a huge fan. Look, and this is not a plug, but interestingly enough, there is an adult novelty store online called Adam and Eve. It is definitely one of my favorites. I've actually found that the adult novelty stores that are around the community are actually more expensive for their items than online is. And there's discretion. It's not like you're going to get a box from the adult novelty store online that's going to come saying big black dildo. It's not good. That's just not what the box says. It's not labeled that way. So there is discretion when you're ordering online. There also within the online stores, if folks are still dealing with the embarrassment and the shame and the humiliation and they don't want to be seen in the community in one of the adult novelty stores, you can order online. The online stores have books. They have, I know this sounds crazy, but they have tutorials. They have instructions to teach you how to use the different devices and toys and paraphernalia. And those online stores are divided up according to categories. There's men, there's women, there's couples, there's LGBTQ, there's bondage, it's all divided up into categories. So there's enough space, if you will, to explore what you think you might be interested in. And you literally just click on the item. You can read about it. You can get the 360 view of it. You can get the ratings of it. So one of my colleagues texted me talking about big black dildo. Sorry, Nick. You can. I'm just saying. You can get the information that you need. There's going to be reviews on there about the items. So there's books. Oh my goodness. Back in the day, long before we had as much information available on the World Wide Web as we do now, I was the daggone book queen. Book on positions and what will cause you to have a G-spot orgasm and there's so much information out there. But if you really want to get that up close and personal experience, it's like Dan said, there are communities within your community that you probably don't even know about, and all you have to do is ask. You have the Passion Party folks and the different organizations that have these mobile adult novelty parties. Ask them; they know. they know where to go to. Yeah. They know where to go to get you educated and empowered and liberated. And then the answer to the question about is it expensive, it all depends on what you want. Like, if you set a budget just like you do for anything else. It can get expensive. If you're a 50 Shades of Grey fan and you want a red room, it's going to cost you a pretty little penny to set up that room. So the price ranges are from completely inexpensive to expensive. It depends on what types of toys and apparatus and how elaborate you want to get. But starting out as a newbie, get you some nipple clips and a rabbit vibrator and a swing or something.
Oh. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
sounds exciting, but I got another question.
Yeah.
Because our topic is we have also swinging and masturbation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we touch on everything. So what exactly is swinging, and what are some common reasons people become swingers? Daniel, what you know about that?
Yeah. So one more thing I'm not exactly an expert in, but I'll swing at it. So really, I think like when we're talking about swinging, I think traditionally or what have you, it's couples, usually married couples that are swapping partners, or where there's parties where that kind of couple swapping will often happen. But the way that I really understand it as being practiced now in a larger context is people are having conversations about what it means to be ethically non-monogamous, right? So maybe you have a primary partner or somebody that you're married to, but within your relationship agreements you essentially make space for sexually expressing yourself with other people. And within that context, the kind of openness to those sorts of relationships, it can on the one hand be incredibly fun and liberating for people, and on the other hand it can also really help them confront a lot of their own shadow aspects when emotions like jealousy can come forward and brings people into a chance to communicate at even deeper levels. So yeah, it's something that can take a lot of different forms, but there is that notion of relating outside of the closed monogamous container, and oftentimes with married people. So
yeah, do
you guys think? Go ahead, Lauren.
I was just going to say, people see it as a way to keep the fire burning. The people that I know that swing, for them, it's about taking their intimacy with their mate to another level, and they really do see it as a way to become more cohesive intimately with their spouse, and it adds a level of it adds, so they say, a level of fulfillment and exhilaration that surpasses anything that they've ever experienced. As far as the, do swingers see swinging as just sex, I think it all depends on who you talk to. The people that I know that swing, I've heard some say, it's no big deal, it's just sex. And then I've heard others say that it's something completely different. It's just like anything else, right? It's open to interpretation, and what that interpretation is going to vary from person to person based on what their relationship needs are, based on what their lived experiences are, based on what their sexual and their emotional needs are. And I think that it's just really important to keep that in mind. I do want to say, and Dan, you touched on it about the jealousy piece. I don't like to use the word jealousy. I think that too oftentimes jealousy is associated with insecurity, though I know that everybody doesn't see it that way. I'm territorial, and I have no interest in sharing my wood with anybody. I would never be okay being in an open relationship where I'm going to be good seeing my mate laying pipe to somebody else. Like, that is never going to happen. And anybody that knows me got enough sense to never even present that option to me. It's not an option. But the flip side of that is, in the relationships that I've been in, ain't nobody trying to share this. Give another man what? Where? Who? Ain't nobody doing that. Like, just the thought of it. You tell a man to just close your eyes for 5 seconds and envisioning somebody else hitting it. They mad and ready to fight. Ain't nobody doing that. But there's a whole group of people that lifestyle works for them. I just ain't in that community. And most of the people that I know are not in that community. We have a caller, so I want to go to the lines real quick. Caller 9849, welcome to House Talk. You're on the air. What is your comment or question?
Hello, all. Thank you for having me on. I'm listening to the conversation and the current topic of swinging. I'm 41 years old. I've never technically swung or been in what they call the lifestyle, but I have been to, years ago I went to a party with a friend of mine, and I was at that point, I was out of relationship, I was at that point where I wanted to experiment. You know, as a man, I think every man, young man or man's dream is to be with two women. So
I've heard.
You know, yeah, be with two women or more than one woman, or have the opportunity to get around the room or whatever. But, you know, going to the party, there was a lot of drinking involved. It was rules. And it was different rooms where you can really observe. And I never, at that point, I had one experience just being with someone else, like a third party in the room. And I kind of learned that I enjoyed watching and I enjoyed being watched. I didn't engage at the party, neither did the female that I came with. And that was mainly because I just was not attracted to anyone. She had more experience than I did. So outside of that, you know, I was invited to a couple of parties, but I kind of felt like that wasn't for me. I think I like something more personal or intimate. So I mean, I've had you know, experience with threesomes, but only with like two other women. I've never had a bad situation, but I had situations that were better than the other ones. You know, and that was when all parties were involved. It was communication involved, and you were mature. You know, I think with anything, I think there's do's and don'ts and wills and won'ts. You know, so there was always a conversation in regards to like, what won't you do? What will you do? What are you into? And things of that nature. And you try to make it mutual. You know, I think once everything was communicated very well, you know what I'm saying, you always had a good time. But also, I mean, in situations where you might have two people, but then it's hard to find a third. A trusting third, like I think you mentioned earlier in there. Someone you're really going to trust. Someone who's actually clean, someone who's actually mature, someone who's not going to abuse certain, you know. And then also, I think, you know, certain situations, like I think emotions do get involved. It depends. Some people I've seen, and I also heard, people will do things off the strength of, okay, well, I know he wants it, or I know, you know, she wants it, you know. I had a friend who was in the lifestyle, and she had a significant other at the time where they swung. They went to clubs, they was going to he-do, they was doing things of that nature, but she had never, her mate had never seen her, and they couple swap, never seen her really, really get, excuse my French, but get, you know, fucked hard, you know. And I think it was a situation where they would go to parties, and, you know, they would go to the, you know, here, they go there to a party, and they would, traditionally, you know, she would give him, their agreement or their arrangement was a little bit different. She never really slept with other men. It was always a third woman. She would either watch or she would engage. I think a couple times they would get up with a couple, but it was a one couple in particular that she might have been attracted to, And it was a situation where I think, I don't know, they were in a hotel and they were swapping, but I think she might have been having too much fun. She might have been having too much fun.
That'll do it every time.
He wasn't totally engaged. He wanted to go. Me, I've never been that type of person. And then when she expressed that to me, there was end up situations where, they're not together anymore. But I think that all comes to communication, and I think you got to be truthful on what you are open to and what you're not open to. It's not a two-way street. I think you got to be very truthful. And sometimes you don't know what you're being truthful to because some people never experience it, or I don't know. I think it's a slippery slope. So I've always been mindful of that, just hearing other people's stories and asking questions. And I think that's number one. I totally indulge into the lifestyle. I just don't what someone just said. Everything is not for everybody.
Right.
Even in regards to the threesome situations, I think that was an experience that I always wanted. I've had some in the past. And who wouldn't want to be with two women? But when you get to a certain age, you kind of been there, done that. And if you do it again, it's got to be under your terms and under the right terms. Everyone has to be mature, and sometimes it doesn't go like that. It's hard to find good, mature people when it comes to sex, that you're going to respect your boundaries, the other people, and everyone's wishes, And also from being a man, I think, people want the man to lead. I have no problem with leading, but when you're dealing with two other people in regards to that, I think everyone needs to be involved. It all depends.
Everybody can't lead.
Some women are submissive. Some people do want to be told to do, but sometimes getting everybody to the party and somebody brings cups and somebody brings soda and wingdings, don't bring no cups to the party. If we're going to party, you got to bring cups and napkins and forks is already here. Because in my opinion, if you're at a certain age, it's time to party. Don't bring nothing that's already here. We're going to have cups and wingdings. You know what I'm saying? So I honestly believe that. That is kind of like my philosophy now at this age. If I'm having sex, I'm having sex. I really want to do it my way. Not my way, but I wanted someone who's like-minded. I don't want nobody who's too inexperienced. I'd rather have somebody. If they can show me something, so be it. But we have to be on the same page. Yeah, if anyone understands what I'm getting. I know it's long with it, but yeah.
No, you're fine. It goes back to I think to summarize what you said. The long and short of it is, it really is grounded in the communication piece. And if people can't be open and honest and transparent about what they want, what they need, what they're willing to accept or not accept, and what that looks like to them, because people's interpretations are different, right? So you have to make sure that you're clarifying what the other person is conveying to you is important to them in order for it to be successful. Caller, thank you so much for calling us tonight.
Right. Yes, thank you. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, wow. More than likely, at this juncture, there are many who are concerned about their sexual behavior, sexual satisfaction, or the lack of sexual pleasure. Couples will often seek therapy. As a clinician, that's one of the things. I do couples therapy. Couples will often seek therapy to address conflicts about sexual frequency, sexual desire, and the fallout after an affair. Changing unwanted consequences of sexual behavior may be highly prevalent motivations for seeking therapy. However, they make up just a small component of the much larger concept of sexual health. Sometimes, when women and men come to therapy to examine confusing discrepancies between their sexual behaviors and their spiritual and ethical values, adults, couples, and families avoid talking about many sexual matters until the consequences of a family member's specific sexual activity are discovered, and then they can no longer be avoided. It goes back to what I said in the beginning, right, about people want to sneak and creep to do it, but they don't want to talk about it openly and honestly, and then something happens and it blows up in their face, and then what? In many families, parents may find it difficult to address common sexual development milestones such as children masturbating, going through puberty, attractions, falling in love, and their first intercourse experience. And what I've realized is far too often, too many people talk about masturbation like it's a dirty word. I don't do that, and they sort of cringe at the thought. So I'm going to put the question out there, but we have another caller, so I'm going to present you with the question, and then we're going to go to the phone lines, and then we can come back to it. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yep.
So the question that I'm going to pose before we go to the phone lines is, who masturbates, and what are the positive and negative effects of masturbation? So put a pin there, and we're going to go to the phone lines. Caller 2143, welcome to House Talk. You're on the line. What is your comment or question?
Okay, so I wanted to kind of comment on the first caller's comment about finding a trusting person.
Okay.
I have had, threesomes, and the first one that I had was set up by someone who I totally trust.
Okay.
But now in the person who was involved, the third person was a very trustworthy person as well, but now I just find it hard to fulfill, those, desires of a threesome because so many people are just immature, I have my person who I am sexually active with, from time to time, but then he's the only person who I will have a threesome with,
Okay.
But it's just hard to me. I think he's correct about, finding someone who's trustworthy, finding someone who's mature. I'm 42, so I do want to say, last year I went through a divorce, but then even before that divorce, I started really finding myself sexually, admitting to the things that I like in a sexual way. And one thing I do want to say is, which I noticed, growing up, some of us as children, I know, I wasn't talked to about sex. I was talked at. I was told, not to do it. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of us, I would say for myself, when it came to figuring out who I was and these feelings I was having because of what I was taught growing up in the household and with religion, it's that's a no, that's taboo. It's man and woman, husband and wife, after you're married, and then come the children. The BDSM, the poly, and the swinging and everything. Back when I was growing up, you didn't talk about stuff like that. Not in a Christian household. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I just, I totally agree with a lot of things that the previous caller was saying, especially about the finding someone who's mature. Even in our age bracket, you still find some women who just aren't mature about it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, that's all. But I do want to ask the question that you pinned. Can I answer that question, or can I comment on that question?
Yeah,
about the masturbation?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. So, I'm going to be totally honest. I masturbate every day.
Okay.
I do, and I find it so fulfilling. It's not as fulfilling as I would with, a man or a woman, but I just find it helps me release myself, release my tension, release, some of the stress, and if I'm not able to get to the gym, and release some of that stress, I know before I go to work, I'm going to masturbate. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, it's a release. And I just think, it's just so many more people now who are open to talking about masturbation, BDSM, the poly lifestyle, swinging. Just so many more people are open to talking about it. And I really think it's a good thing. you know, like I really, really think it's a good thing. So, you know, keep up your podcast. I like it. So.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, what do you all think? Who do you think masturbates, and what do you feel like are the positive and the negative things associated with it?
Well, I like what the caller just said, especially, I mean, she gave a good example, you know, relieve stress. You know, it takes the edge off, helps you sleep, keeps you relaxed. Pretty much a lot of the same reason, you know, a lot of the same reactions you get after having an orgasm with sex. You have, you know, that's what happens when you masturbate. Usually, you know, a little bit better than anybody else knows, you know. So, you know, don't take you quite as long to get where you got to go, you know. You can make, you know.
It's the truth, anyhow. Yes.
You know, if you only got 3 minutes, you know, you got to get out the door, do whatever you got to do. You don't have to go through all that. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, that's just my thought. I mean, it's a thought out there. Just putting it out there. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah. So, you know, the first question is like who, right? And really the answer to that question is, you know, everybody who's a sexual being. And, you know, I haven't met too many human beings that aren't sexual beings. So it's pretty much everybody. But I think what makes a difference of whether or not they're positive or negative effects is it's not that whether you masturbate or not, it's how. Because, you know, I certainly, you know, am aware, you know, of patterns where people can masturbate quite unconsciously, or, you know, can actually use that as a vehicle, a tool, or an expression of self-love and self-discovery. And, you know, it's not like saying that there's like a right and a wrong way to do it, but, you know, there's a world of difference, you know, even just speaking from the perspective of a man to, you know, like mechanically jerking off in front of a screen to, you know, exploring your body and, you know, really dropping into sensations and expanding the threshold of your ability to feel pleasure. There's a world of difference there. And a lot of times, you know, when I'm working with my clients, you know, it's sort of like base level, like exploring yourself, you know, how do you expand your sexual potential? It's, well, learning what's possible, you know, like by truly being with yourself and going through that process of learning who you are as an embodied erotic being.
Yep. You hit the nail right on the head, no pun intended. But I think I really do. I think that it's an exploration piece. And one of the things that I learned, you know, as I said, in that time period where, you know, the books were what was available, and the way that I learned about masturbation is, if I don't know my body and what I like and what is fulfilling and gratifying for me, how can I make that clear to somebody else? You know what I mean? It's like, yes, I have a saying that my body is a blank canvas, and I want my mate to paint a masterpiece. And that's been my position in every relationship that I've been in. You know, it is, you know, this is Noni King. You can have it your way, but you need to go on a treasure hunt and you need to find out. But I feel like I have a certain responsibility to myself to be aware, because I don't, if this makes sense, I don't want to learn the hard way, so to speak, that there's stuff that I'm like, oh my God, don't do that. You know what I mean? So it's like there are certain things that I know that just make my skin crawl. I'm like, oh God, that's not fun for me. And part of the reason why I know it's not fun for me is because I found out on my own, right? It was like, oh God, whose idea was that? And people, it's one of those things that shy away. I think that, you all highlighted some of the positive aspects of masturbation and releasing tension and the stress relief and being able to relax and just chill and the exploration and really empowering oneself to be intimately one with your own body, I think is very, very important. But then the negative aspects of it, certainly as a clinician, goodness gracious, I know people that have become addicted to masturbation, and I think, Dan, you touched on, those individuals just sit in the chair and jerk off to porn all day, and then they're not able to perform in their relationship. So it gets to the point that they masturbate so much that it creates a barrier in their sexually intimate relationships, and that's a problem. I think the other thing too is you've got folk out here that don't have enough sense to properly clean their sex toys, so you're masturbating with toys that aren't sanitary, and you're getting infections and what have you. And I know I can feel the listeners cringing now, like, oh my God, who does that? There's plenty of people who do that. So the sanitary piece. And the reality of it is there are sex addicts who are just, quite frankly, they are addicted to masturbating. So it's all things in moderation. It's being able to strike that balance and knowing that anything done in excess can prove to be problematic in your life, and you don't want that. So it's no different than BDSM or swinging or what have you. Before you embark upon it, if you're one of those people that's cringing, I dare you to do it. I dare you to try it and see. You'd be like, oh, didn't know.
You're always daring somebody.
I dare them in a New York minute. I will. But I think that people owe it to themselves to explore themselves, and quite frankly, I think that some people will be less uptight. Quit being so darn hateful. Flick your beans sometime. You wouldn't be so darn hateful. So you got to do what you got to do. So yeah, and it's one of those things that strikes you strike a balance, and I think that it'll work itself through and out. And again, if you go to the online stores, there's a masturbation link. You can click on it, and it'll give you a whole bunch of creative newbie ideas if you really want to take it to the next level and really truly experience yourself in a way that will help you to be a more fulfilling mate. Because let me just say, I ain't met a man yet that don't like watching a woman masturbate, but that's a whole nother show. So I'm gonna go ahead. My guns is in the holster.
You don't put them back in there. Right.
Look, we can go ahead and move on.
Yes, let's we. Yeah, so basically, once considered a perversion, people have started regarding masturbation as a healthy practice. So it's satisfying, pleasant, safe, and ensures sexual activeness. Some, have considered having a set number, or some people just kind of go with the flow. And sometimes people think they're overdoing it. And, you touched on that already, that sometimes people might, think they're overdoing it, might want to talk to somebody to make sure, if they're going through an addiction, that they are getting help for that. But the good news is that there's no specific number that people can set for masturbation sessions until it does start to harm their daily activities. So from a health perspective, you just hit on one of them, that there are cases when you do need to keep your private parts on lock. And one of them, I guess, some of the negative health aspects of masturbating could be, using unclean products. What other kinds of negative health aspects are there, if any?
I think one of the biggest things that I'll just put out there clinically, it's the only one I'm going to mention this time, I think the psychological component. I think that when you masturbate so much that it adversely affects your ability to emotionally engage with the individual that you're in an intimate relationship with. It's this domino effect, right? It's impacting your emotional functioning, which is going to have an adverse effect on your relationship, which opens the door to a lot of other problems. So it becomes cyclical, and it can spiral out of control, and it can morph into all of these other things, i.e., becoming an addict. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would say as far as the health, and knowing that, you can get infections, you can make yourself raw. You can men or women, you can masturbate so much that you literally make yourself raw, and it's like, whoa, what are you doing? Anything in excess can prove problematic. Is there anything you want to add, Dan, from a health perspective?
Yeah. I mean, these patterns can start very early. For example, we've been talking about, religion, or, the shame that can come from, families not being able to talk about these things in responsible ways. So with men, for example, a lot of men will learn to masturbate in secret and as quickly as possible, right? Because they don't want to get caught. And a lot of times, those patterns of wanting to get off quickly can lead to sexual dysfunctions down the road in relationships. Like the numbers of the average time spent in intercourse is kind of abysmal. It's like 5 to 7 minutes, and even though that's a little hard to believe. So,
not really.
Yeah. People say different things, it's hard to measure this kind of stuff, but it's definitely not ideal. But, so these different things can definitely happen. And, if a man is ejaculating every day, that is a massive drain on his energy, and this is a kind of primal drive. He's going to have lower testosterone. He's not going to be able to focus and be present as much as he would be. That's not even just like modern science. Wisdom traditions have known this for thousands of years, that, ejaculate specifically is vital life force that can be used and channeled and transmuted, for higher purposes. And in this case, it's not to say that ejaculation is something that's wrong. It's, of course, natural, but ejaculating every day will drain a man, and he will be, not as much as he could be, for sure, with that excess like you're talking about.
Yeah. It makes me think about, when you said that, it makes me think about how athletes are encouraged to not have sex before a major competition.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, it's because you're talking about this idea of, relaxing to take the exercise. When the athlete has gotten to that point, they are filled to the brim with vital life force. There's power that's coursing through their bodies, and that old kind of like old stereotype trope where it's like, the man comes and then it's all over. He rolls away and falls asleep, and it's because that's a lot of energy that goes away. However many millions of sperm cells, that life itself. So the power that's there is immense, and when it's spent all the time.
Hello?
Hi,
are you there, Dan?
yes, I'm there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I think we
there
had
was some beeping.
Yeah, we had a little breakdown there. Lauren, are you there? Dr. Pitts? I think we lost her.
Uh-oh.
I cannot She just asked me if I could hear her. So no. We might be closing around, Dr. Dan. Keep talking. We just got a technical difficulty. We got to get Lauren back. But you can go ahead on your thoughts.
I was pretty much done my thought, but just finishing that off and saying that, it really does make a huge difference. It's the way that we masturbate that makes a difference, whether or not it's something that is, has positive effects on our life or not. If we're using it as a tool for exploration and self-love and self-pleasure, then it can really be a transformative practice, in people's lives. And if it's used to numb out and, just escape, then it's going to be that, it's like Dr. Pitts mentioned, it could lead to addiction. So it's one of the reasons why when, I work with my clients on their own sexual liberation, I teach them how to make masturbation a meditation, to drop into such deep presence with the sensations that they're feeling in their body, that they're actually able to experience pleasure and orgasm in deeper ways than they ever thought were possible. And, when you can fill yourself up by yourself, you don't become dependent on another person for your pleasure anymore. So in a way, having a healthy practice of self-pleasure is one of the most liberating things you can do for yourself sexually, because to your partner to, reach orgasm or, what have you, because you're filling up on your own and then coming together. And it's kind of like both people coming to the table, with their cups already full. Makes for a lot of fun.
Awesome. And I do think we're still having a technical difficulty. Dr. Pitts, are you there? Can you hear her, Dan?
I can't, no.
You can't? Okay. Well, I'm going to keep rolling, and hopefully that her connection will come back, okay? Because
she says to hang up and call back in.
I did.
Okay, I didn't.
Okay. Oh, you need to hang up and call back in.
Please enjoy this Verizon ringback tone while your party is reached.
All right, maybe I'll be back.
Hello, is anybody there?
Hello?
Dan?
Yes, I'm here.
We made it back. We
So,
made it back. We're trying to beam her up. Yes.
are we all here?
I don't hear Dr. Pitts.
Hmm.
And I've hung up 3 times and called back in.
Yeah, this is my third time. I didn't even hear anybody on the second time.